If I dropped a plate and broke it, they would slap me and yell at me until I cried. But if Jacob did the same thing, they would baby him.
Oh, Jacob, did you break that plate?
Some families have odd or even dark secrets. Mine has a bit of both, although I never really knew this until I was much older. I know that I shouldn't be surprised though, as people tend to not tell children much, as they don't understand the complexities of adult relationships. It was like that for my brother Jacob and I. Even though we were very close in age, we definitely were treated very differently. Our father treated us the same, but our mother and grandparents never did. Oh, my name is Jeremy, by the way, and I was born first. For the first few years, things were great, or at least I remember it that way. But then one day, Jacob was born, and not long afterwards, our grandparents moved in with us. After that, things changed drastically. It was little things at first. My mother used to play with me all the time, but suddenly she was always too busy. Hello, Mama, do you want to play tag with me? Please?
Why would I want to?
But you never want to play with me anymore. Ever since Jacob was born, you don't care about me.
Of course I don't. Why would I?
It really hurt to hear things like that, and sadly she wasn't the only one to be mean to me. Until they moved in, I hadn't known my grandparents, and I wish that had never changed, as they were even worse than my mother. They were very cruel. Hello, grandmother and grandfather?
Oh, it's you. What are you still doing here? If you were my child, I would have given you up for adoption years ago. Such an ugly and stupid child.
At first, I thought that maybe my grandparents and mother were just mean and cruel to everyone, but they always treated Jacob like he could do no wrong, like he was a saint. If I dropped a plate and broke it, they would slap me and yell at me until I cried. But if Jacob did the same thing, they would baby him.
Oh, Jacob, did you break that plate?
I'm sorry, Mama.
Oh, it's okay. You didn't mean to. Are you okay, though?
Well, it scared me. But yeah, I'm okay.
That's okay. Let's get you a new toy. That will help you to feel better.
Sadly, they were also just as cruel to my father as well. I couldn't understand why they were such terrible people. The older I got, the worse they behaved. When I turned 15, they forced me to get a job and then forced me to give them my paychecks. It was so annoying, and they justified it by saying that I owed them for all the food and clothes that I had used over the years. It was either that or they would demand that I start to pay rent. They did, however, give me a small amount back as an allowance. It was so insulting, but there wasn't anything that I could do about it. Or at least that's what I thought. I remember one time when I came home from work and my paycheck was smaller than usual, and my grandfather became angry with me because of it. I had been sick for a few days and had to miss both school and work as a result, which meant my check had fewer hours on it. My grandfather didn't care though. What is the meaning of this? Are you trying to steal from us? Why is this smaller than usual? I'm sorry, grandfather, but I missed some shifts because I was sick, so I got paid for fewer hours. That's not my problem. Why are you so weak that you can't work just because of a little cold? Do you expect that the bank will give us a break on the mortgage just because you had the sniffles? He then threatened to never let it happen again, and then he punched me and gave me a black eye. The next day, I went into work, and my coworker asked how I had gotten the black eye, and I was so tired of lying about such injuries that I told him in confidence how I had gotten it. Buddy, that's insane. You need to report them to the police. No one should have to go through that kind of torment. I can't. If I do, then my family will be split apart. I would rather just put up with it until I'm 18 and then leave. But what about your dad? Do you really think it's fair that you should leave and let him continue to suffer? Isn't he getting abused too? He had a point, actually. My grandparents and mother did tend to hit him from time to time as well. I knew then that I had to do something, but it took me a bit before I came up with an actual plan. A week later, though, it struck me. I just needed to build an airtight case about all the abuse that they were heaping on us, and so I began recording every time they yelled at either of us, or they hit or slapped one of us. Sadly, it didn't take all that long before I had dozens of videos and pictures of the abuse. I didn't want to surprise my father, so I approached him with what I had and asked him to make sure he was on board with taking my evidence to the police. This is most of what I have. It should be enough to put them in prison, or at the very least, to get them out of the house and away from us. Yes, I agree. And I'm sorry that I didn't do anything over all these years. I was just afraid that if I had, that your mother would have sent you away. I don't get it, though. Why has Mom and her parents always been so cruel to me and you, and not to Jacob? Well, you're old enough to know the truth. You see, both Jacob and you are my sons, but you have different mothers. I dated a woman just before, and she became pregnant without my knowing it. We broke up, and a year after you were born, she came to me and told me that she couldn't afford to keep you, and so even though it would put a strain on our marriage, your mother and I agreed to take you in and raise you. After Jacob was born, your grandparents found out about this, and they hated you since you weren't truly family in their minds. And what about my real mom? I don't know. I haven't spoken to her in many years, but at any rate, you've done an amazing job. We need to take this to the police right away and press charges against the three of them. And so we did just that. It took a bit of convincing, as the officers found it hard to believe that a man was allowing himself and his son to be abused by his wife and in-laws. But with the mountain of evidence that I had gathered, they began to come around. There was so much evidence, in fact, that they immediately went and arrested my mother and grandparents. It was such a relief to finally have them out of the house. But then the trials began, and at first things seemed rather bleak. My grandparents' lawyer made the case that they were old and senile and hadn't understood that what they were doing was wrong, and so they got off with just a warning and were released into my father's custody. As for my mother, though, her lawyer didn't have the same success, and although he tried to justify her behavior, her judge wasn't having any of it, and he sentenced her to 10 years in prison. On top of that, my father's lawyer filed for divorce and stated that she had breached the conditions of their prenuptial agreement. She had abused both my father and I, and as such, she wasn't entitled to either the house or the children, and my father was awarded both in the divorce. Unfortunately, he couldn't go after her for alimony, though, because she was heading to prison, and he had always been the breadwinner in the family. But he was happy enough to have her gone and out of his life. When it came to her parents, though, he had no love for them at all, and he placed them in one of the worst old age homes we had in the city. I know for a fact that they hate it there. It doesn't help that they are terrible people, and that they constantly argue and fight with the employees, though. Even though it isn't a high-class place, their constant bickering with the staff only makes it worse for them. That did Jacob with us, and he wasn't very pleased with the new power structure in the family. Knowing this, my father sent him away to military school. It pained him to do so, but he knew that Jacob needed some tough love to realize that things needed to change, and that his mother and grandparents had spoiled and ruined him. I'm happy to say that after years of military school, Jacob came back a changed man, and we have both even grown to become not only great brothers to one another, but also best of friends as well. He's even going to be my best man at my wedding next year. And if that wasn't enough good news, soon after all the trials were wrapped up, my father hired a private investigator to find my real mom, and he did. It turns out that she still lived close by and had wanted to reach out for years, but had been worried that doing so could split our family up. With my evil mother and grandparents out of the way, I was finally able to get to know my real mother. It does feel weird to have such a strange and mixed family, but since Jacob's mother and our grandparents were taken out of the picture, things have only gotten better and better. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.